The AeroPress is one of the most loved coffee products ever made. Inexpensive, very easy, excellent coffee, and for almost 20 years now, the AeroPress has been basically untouchable as a brewer. But then in 2021, AeroPress was acquired. And as things do, they started changing. And what followed was one of the, I think, most interesting things to happen in the coffee world landscape in the last several years. But a lot of people have ended up asking, is AeroPress having an identity crisis here? Alan Adler, a Stanford engineer, invented the AeroPress in 2005. This is one of the very first AeroPresses. Now, it did go through some material changes, some plastic changes, but for almost the next 15 years, he refused to make basically any change to the AeroPress. One product, one price, made in the US, basically exactly the way that he wanted it. People would practically beg for a bigger one, and he said no. Same for a non-plastic version. Again, the answer was no. Custom colors or a clear version, no. Different types of accessories that people wanted and actually other companies ended up producing. And again, the answer was no.
Please, no! No!
The AeroPress looked like the ultimate anti-corporate coffee product. Now, eventually, AeroPress did release a slightly modified version of this called the AeroPress Go, a little bit smaller and folded up into this neat little cup that you could carry around with you. That was AeroPress's only significant product release under Alan Adler in his time of ownership. And I do remember feeling this way about AeroPress, back in like 2019, 2020. This brand is starting to feel a little stale, even feeling like it wasn't keeping up with the coffee world, and that maybe it had even started that slow slide down to irrelevance. Then in 2021, AeroPress was acquired by Tiny Capital. And when that happened, things started moving very, very quickly. They released metal filters in 2022. Then in early 2023, the flow control cap. Then, not even a year later, they released the clear AeroPress and the AeroPress XL in mid-2023. In 2024, we saw first the release of the clear colors, then the AeroPress Go Plus. Then before the year was out, the AeroPress Premium, the long-awaited glass version of the AeroPress. In 2025, there was the Clear XL, the premium black and white versions, the AeroPress hand grinder, and already this year, they've released the new AeroPress Steel and the XL flow control cap. And believe it or not, that's not even all the stuff they released. I left some stuff out. So in just the last 4.5 years, AeroPress has launched over 15 brand new products, whereas in the previous 15 years, they released one new product. Now, when all this started happening, you would see these comments online, like, this isn't the AeroPress we know and love. This isn't what Alan Adler would have wanted. All this kind of stuff. But the reality was that AeroPress was actually shipping product requests that the core fan base had been asking for, in some cases for many years before the actual acquisition happened. There was other stuff that the fan base didn't like, but when it came to the actual releases, it was obvious that AeroPress actually was listening to people. Here's a very interesting example. In 2023, AeroPress teased a glass AeroPress at an expo. So something people have been asking for forever, a non-plastic AeroPress. And then all of a sudden, surprise to everybody, there was one right there on the show floor. And then for over a year, you didn't hear anything about it. 18 months after that tease, AeroPress launched the AeroPress Premium. And when they did, sure enough, some people didn't like that they had done that. They didn't like either the price, the way AeroPress had done it. They said, this shouldn't be made like this. It should be metal instead. And then, in response to that, AeroPress this year makes a metal AeroPress. But in the midst of all of this stuff, all these new releases, new colors for different things, new products that people were very polarized on, one thing didn't actually change a whole lot. The OG AeroPress. They put a different logo on here. That's about the only thing that is actually different with this. And they didn't put a huge price hike on it either. When the AeroPress first launched all the way back in 2005, it sold for $30. And after the acquisition, the price of the AeroPress did go up a little. It went up to $40. But they also started doing sales and different types of promos. So if you're patient, you look for a discount, you can often find an original AeroPress for somewhere between $32 to $35. Now, even if the original AeroPress had have just kept up with inflation from its launch price, it should cost today $50. So it's even coming in at $10 less than the inflation adjusted price. Still made in the US, still looks the same, still makes coffee the same, all that. But something else started happening as well, which a lot of people didn't think was as great. Shrinkflation. AeroPress owners and customers started noticing that things that used to come with the AeroPress weren't actually included anymore. Things like the zipper bag that it used to come in, the funnel that used to come with it, the filter holder that used to come with it, and filters. The original AeroPress used to come with about 350 filters, more or less a year's supply. And today it comes with this many. Now, to be totally fair, I still remember when I bought my first AeroPress and I had no real coffee experience. Some of this made the whole process, the whole experience of trying to figure out how to use this thing a little bit more confusing. I didn't know, is this funnel for coffee grounds? Am I supposed to put it on here? Does this ever go on here? You learn how to do it eventually, but from a simplicity standpoint, it's not necessarily required, and I do get that. You can still buy these things from AeroPress too, by the way, but if you go and buy as much of the stuff as you can along with some extra filters, the price for the whole setup bumps up closer to $70. Now, once I figured out how to use my AeroPress back when I first got it, I'll be honest, a lot of this stuff just kind of lived in my drawer and I didn't think about it a whole lot. The one place where the funnel is genuinely helpful is if you want to brew into a cup that is maybe a little bit too small for this lid, then you can kind of stick your funnel in and put the AeroPress on and you got a nice stable thing to press. But I can get why they stopped making that stuff. Not a huge value to every user. Okay, what many people really wished they hadn't changed was the filters. So when you look at the big picture of everything that has kind of happened with AeroPress, you have this company that a lot of people felt like was on the border of languishing, not really keeping up with the rest of the coffee industry, who then gets acquired and starts delivering on a lot of the very noisy requests from that product's fan base. Then the fan base starts to pretty loudly complain about how AeroPress was following through on those requests. Either the products weren't exactly like they imagined them in their mind, they were too expensive or aggressively priced, or both. Most AeroPresses are still made in the US, but there are also a couple products now that are made elsewhere. The AeroPress Premium is made in China, as is the new XL Flow Control Cap. And in the midst of all this change, you have the original AeroPress still sitting there, still virtually indestructible, still making great coffee, super portable, easy to use, easy cleanup, and if anything, accounting for inflation and even the shrinkflation, I think, arguably an even more aggressive price point than it launched with. And it's because of all that the AeroPress original is still very firmly planted in my top recommendation list. Now, when AeroPress goes and releases, whatever, the clear, the colors, the bigger ones, the smaller ones, the ancillary accessories, do you have to go out and buy those? No. Are they going to, in most cases, get you any better coffee than this one? Not really. They're, in a lot of ways, just for fun. If you like the way they look, you don't mind the price, go at it. But also, the OG still works just fine. So the question is AeroPress having an identity crisis? And I want to hear your thoughts on this one in the comments. On one hand, you can say absolutely yes. This is not the company that Alan Adler would have run. The pricing, the release schedule, the new products, the pricing of the new products, the marketing. This isn't the way that he probably would have run the company. But there's also a significant argument for no, they're not. They actually haven't altered the core product at all. And all of the new products that they have released have actually been asked for by people who love AeroPress. Maybe just not always in the way that those people think they wanted or expected. But then again, you can't please everybody either. So I would love to hear from you on this. Let me know your thoughts down there. If you're an owner of one of AeroPress's now large line of products, I'd love to hear your experience. I hope your next cup of coffee is fantastic, and we'll see you on the next one.